Today I want to speak about one of the most famous quotes from Shankara, the great Advaita Vedanta sage. And it's one that we need to contemplate upon, and it's perfect for your understanding of the world and your understanding of yourself. And so I'm going to look at, I've actually got it in this book, Be As You Are, the teachings of Ramana Maharishi. And the quote goes like this: Brahman is real, the universe is unreal, and the universe is Brahman. Now, that quote doesn't make much sense to a lot of people because it kind of contradicts itself. But the last line explains the first two. The universe is real only when it is perceived as Brahman. Now, what does that truly mean? Well, the universe is unreal when we perceive it from our sense of duality. So if Jason is looking out at the world and chopping it up with his intellect and his prefrontal cortex here in the cold cognition and chopping the world up according to his own beliefs and his own prejudices, then we create this illusion of a world that is divided. But if we see the world as Brahman, that means we've gone beyond that sense of self and we're residing or abiding in the Atman, which is the undifferentiated consciousness at the core of our being, which is identical to Brahman. So Brahman being the ultimate reality of the universe, call it the Godhead if you will, but it's an idea that's beyond the Abrahamic view of God as, God as someone who condemns and is always watching over us. Brahman's more of an energy that animates the universe, was here before the Big Bang and is still emanating through the reality now, and is the reality according to Shankara. So we need to understand this quote, because when we are looking out at the world through the filter of who we believe we are, we create all the problems in the world. This sense of I that we have, this firm grasp on this I, this ego, this separate, isolated self, creates all the problems in the world. And we all have this. There's no doubt about it. But to differing degree, we all have this. So this quote is about realigning with the true self, the Atman, and then seeing the world for what it truly is, which is actually Brahman. Looking out at this world in its true non-dual nature. There is no sense of duality from that place. But to get to that place, you have to do a lot of inner work, self-inquiry, meditation. It often can't happen overnight. There are stories of instant enlightenment and this and that, but we should be somewhat a little bit skeptical about those stories, because what we actually do see in the world is that people actually do go through a process of sadhana to get to that stage, to see the world in its true oneness. And so to dive more into that quote, we need to look at the Viveka Chudamani from Shankara, which is where the quote is from. And this is a quote about exactly what we're talking about, just to dive further into this inquiry and this contemplation. Brahman is the reality, the one existence, absolutely independent of human thought or idea. Because of the ignorance of our human minds, the universe seems to be composed of diverse forms. It is Brahman alone. A jar made of clay is not other than clay. It is clay essentially. The form of the jar has no independent existence. What then is the jar? Merely an invented name. The form of the jar can never be perceived apart from the clay. What then is the jar? An appearance. The reality is the clay itself. The universe is an effect of Brahman. It can never be anything else but Brahman. Apart from Brahman, it does not exist. There is nothing beside him. He who says that the universe has an independent existence is still suffering from delusion. He is like a man talking in his sleep. The universe, therefore, is nothing but Brahman. It is superimposed upon him. It has no separate existence apart from its ground. So, as Shankara says in the Viveka Chudamani, that our personality, our persona, our ego is the jar. It's an appearance of the actual reality. And, this is kind of like the rope and the snake analogy, where someone mistakes a rope for a snake. They see a snake in the rope. But this was a misperception. Someone actually just misperceived the reality and saw a snake for a rope and acted accordingly because of that. And this is what is happening because we take our personality, the jar or the snake, to be the reality. We act accordingly. Now, this is where all the trouble comes from. We are actually truly the clay. We are the Atman. We are the Brahman. There is no question about that. That is the reality of existence. But we have taken the jar, the personality, to be real. And then we all act accordingly. But it's only an appearance. And to magnify that problem, we are looking out at the world and we are seeing other jars, other personalities, other appearances, and then we are coming into conflict and creating the world that we have. Now, I'm not saying that our world is in as much conflict as it was back maybe 100 years ago when there was world wars and so forth and so on, but the same problem persists. The same problem persists, which is taking the personality to be a real and permanent thing that is isolated from the rest of the world. Now, what all spiritual training does is it trains you to come back into contact with the Brahman, or in Buddhism you would say the Tathata, the ability to see suchness in the world. And that's the place we have to come back to. And this is why actually Zhuangzi, the great Taoist sage, said that Qing, which in Maoist logical theory means a species-specific essence. Now, according to Zhuangzi, the Qing, which is found in the prefrontal cortex here, in the front of the brain, where the intellect is, the reason he called it a flaw was because we dissect the world up into this and that. Then we create the world according to our own beliefs and our own prejudices and just our own agendas. But that's not really the way that the world is. That's the thing. So the spiritual process is to try and down-regulate or even to get rid of that Qing. This is why actually Zhuangzi recommended fasting the mind, meaning, taking out all of the content, stop this habit of cutting the world up into this and that, and just allow the world to be as it will. That practice and that quote about fasting the mind was actually the inspiration behind my book, Fasting the Mind, obviously with all the other information as well. But Zhuangzi definitely inspired that. So you have to train yourself to see the world as it truly is. Now, most of us are on the level of the universe is unreal. We're on that level. We haven't come to the level of the universe is Brahman. We haven't gained that perception that the universe is Brahman. We are still looking out at the world in its dualistic nature. So we really have to be committed to understand that our personality, our ego, our sense of self is an appearance. It's an appearance. This is what Maya is. Maya is an appearance, the illusion of reality. Maya in Sanskrit means illusion, but it also means the measurement of reality. Now, the measurement is a function of that appearance. We are measuring the reality, and then in measuring the reality, we are creating this sense of duality, which we, in some sense, all suffer from, because we are coming into contact with other people who themselves are infected with this illusion that the world is separate, they are separate from the world, and their intellect is in charge. Their prefrontal cortex, the this and that part of their mind, is in charge of their whole life. And this is where all the problems begin. So we have to really come back to that place of the universe is Brahman. And that's part of our spiritual journey, all of us, is to begin to work on that sense of our persona. It doesn't mean you won't exist. It means that what you've done is the spiritual work, the meditation that you're all doing, is working on your mind and bringing your mind back to functioning naturally, as opposed to linking thoughts and creating this sense of ego. You are coming back into nature with the mind, which is empty, spontaneous, and free, and it doesn't stick to anything. It is here for us just to experience the world in its true non-dual nature. But we are trained to, link thoughts, create ourselves, be somebody, and so forth and so on. So what we need to do is we need to engage in deep spiritual practice. Even if you have a 9-to-5 job, there's still time to engage in sadhana after work, and also time to inquire into the nature of yourself. And our job here as a human is to come back into resonance with that Atman, coming back into that core of our being, so then we can begin to experience the world as Brahman. That's the goal. And that's why the spiritual masters themselves stand above most people, because the bliss and that they emit, and that unwavering joy you see in their eyes, that happiness that they emit, is because they are residing in that place. They have come to that place. And this is why the whole guru worship and that happened in Asia, because, and why people actually believe that some of these gurus are an incarnation of God. That can be taken a little too far. What you need to understand is, as with Ramana Maharishi, is that, Bhagavan here, if you look at the word Bhagavan, we should use that word as the guru who is in abidance with the self. They have come back into the heart of who we all truly are, which is the Brahman, and they are residing in that place. And that's why the joy and the bliss is emitting from them, because they've come back into contact with that undifferentiated consciousness. And we all have that opportunity, but we need to understand that we are not the jar. And to do that, we have to come back into accord with the clay that makes the jar, the ground of all being. And that's possible for all of us, but we have to be sincere in our search. We have to be honest, humble, and sincere in the exploration of consciousness and the rediscovery of who we truly are. Shanti, shanti, shanti.